this session's called Hot Topics because basically what it is just a real organic, free-flow dialogue of topics that you talk with your colleagues about, maybe in your office or down the hall. I know Laura and I talk on the way in. And so what we wanted to do is just talk about it here in a different type of setting. And so we identified some that are kind of interesting right now. One of them that we decided on was assessment. It's a very general term, but we've talked a lot about assessment with our SACS application, and then soon we're going to have our Adjunct Academy. This is going to be the theme. So this is one of the topics. So I'm folding in here because in a moment we're going to pull out of the basket just to add some fun to it, you know. It's Friday afternoon, let's have a good time. The other topic that's been in, I know in the higher ed and in the media, well maybe not even in the media, but is something called MOOCs. Does anyone know what a MOOC is? Michelle, what's a MOOC?
So they have the online open access courses. Isn't it through MIT offers several?
Yeah. And then, yeah, the M stands for massive.
Massive.
So that's kind of their,
Massive online open courses. And a lot of the elite universities are doing them. I think that's why there's a lot of hype. But Laura, Toll, and myself are taking a MOOC, right? Campus, our LMS has their own network, and there's a whole bunch of MOOCs that they have available. And if you want to teach a MOOC, you can submit one to them. And so Laura and I are taking a MOOC about a MOOC. Yeah. It's really good. It just started Monday, and I think you can still sign up. It's a 4-week MOOC, and I love it.
Me too. I do.
It's a very good topic. The other one topic that we have is developmental education. There's a lot of changes going on, and there's some of you in this room that are directly working with students or providing services. And so another topic of dialogue. This other one is the flipped classroom. Does anyone know what that is? Yay.
That's when, actually, I was just at the Texas Distance Learning Conference in Galveston a few weeks ago, and went to a session on a flipped classroom because I'd heard about it for a while. But they succinctly put it in a way that I thought was really nice and understandable, and that is when you offer the passive content of your classes online, like, you know, readings and lectures and things like that. And then during your class, you do something that's very active and participatory.
So it's kind of a shift in the way you teach, and I know Denise has been doing some of that in her own classroom. So we thought that would be a topic to dialogue about. And then these are empty because maybe there's things that that we didn't think about that you consider to be hot topics and want to add. Is there something that you want to add? The topic?
this may fall under assessment, but I was just reading an article in Inside Higher Ed earlier in the week about competency completion. And I don't know that we've had some of these dialogues here, but I don't know if anybody knows anything about that. Anything more than that, I don't know. I didn't know much about it until I read about it. But
Do you mean like competency-based education, like Western Governor University, which they don't really have grades, everything's based off of competency?
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that kind of stuff. So I think that, yeah. Thank you.
We'll put it down, and even you know, even if there's no one here that we can at least talk about what we know.
Maybe one potential discussion might be about e-textbooks.
Oh, okay, that's
You know, there's been a lot of concern. It is something I believe that is coming, and I believe it's coming here. I believe that there will be a day when that'll be the norm. So that's what we're talking about.
anything else that you're thinking about? about your own job? These are kind of like big, broad topics, but how about just things in here at Northeast Lakeview or at Alamo colleges or community colleges in the state of Texas, anything like that that you've been thinking about?
Well, I saw one article that I thought was interesting was a professor that was using, just about everybody has cell phones, and some students tend to be introverted or shy, but they're more open to texting something, and so he was able to get the student's question anonymously. Somehow they had a system where, and so the professor would, see what the question is and then respond to it. I thought that was something.
Using their cell phones in the classroom?
Yeah, apparently, that was the way I read the article, that, whatever media they had, they could text, that the professor would be able to look at that, and they would remain anonymous, you wouldn't know who that was, and so kind of open that up for more introverted type students.
I've heard that coined, and I might have it wrong, but something like bring your own mobile device or bring your own, in like even conferences will have sessions on that because so many people now have iPads or so we can talk about that. All right, I think we have plenty, and then we need a timer. Somebody who is who's got a timer, and that way we don't go over one of those topics. We might not get to all of them, and if we really, really are engaged, we won't let the timer take control over us. But it does help to kind of structure the conversation, and so if
How much time? Oh, because she got one.
Oh, I got a timer too. So
Okay.
There you go.
What's
Whoever
the
wants to
time?
do it. 12? I don't know, about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And then if whoever's doing the timer, if you could, at 9 minutes, if you could just say like 9 minutes, that way we know to wrap it up. Is that cool? Okay, so Denise, you have the timer, right? And this
I have
just
the timer.
helps me have fun, okay? Okay, I'm sorry, Laura, you be
Competency-based education.
Mark, you start? Begin.
Okay, so this is the one that you mentioned that where there's no grades. I do have I went to an undergraduate college where we had no grades. But I'm not sure that at that point there were there weren't the competencies that were listed. It was just like your professor would write a paragraph. So later on in life, when I wanted to go to graduate school, I had to prove myself to the graduate school because I had no grades. So I'll just throw that out there in that, it would require kind of a reworking of the whole system and to make sure that those students that don't have grades are going to be able to get into graduate school.
Yeah, I know, I'm sorry.
You go ahead.
I know, at least from when I was working for the government, metrics was a big thing, find any kind of metric to, show any kind of progress or what have you. So, like you're saying, if there's no grade, then.
How do you know?
Yeah.
It's pass-fail, basically.
Yeah.
You either have it or you don't have it.
And I'm just not familiar how the whole process works. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's not going to be a GPA attached to what you've done.
That's right.
Compete somewhere else. So you'll just have to prove that you were competent enough to continue.
Well, and the way I had to prove it was by taking some graduate courses, getting good grades.
So they were looking for grades.
Yeah, they were looking for grades.
I was going to say that in the article I was reading, it was sort of an open time. Like you were done when you were done. If it took you 2 years to do it, if it took you 4 years, if it took you 6 years. So that sort of insistence that the whole point of it was to complete at some point.
So
it's
do you
about
have
completion.
milestones that you're looking to reach, or how do you
Their
know?
competencies, well, so that's that kind
So
of.
how do you
rubric
show your
based.
competency though?
Well, I think if instructors, again, according to this article, the way instructors were utilized in this process was really as sort of mentors. And so you were no longer kind of the seat of knowledge in this particular kind of setup. What you were is you were a mentor, really, I think, working with an independent learning kind of setup and adult learning setup in that sense, where really that's what the faculty member served as just somebody who guided from the side, so to speak, and helped a person, helped a student when they didn't really understand a concept or something along those lines. But there was, I mean, it was competency based. So you had to, there's some sort of assessment tool, right, that assesses whether you've reached that competency or not.
So would it be a lot of oral, not necessarily exam, but oral
Well,
chats
I think-
and written as well?
I think they do a lot of examinations, but the missing element is the classroom. There's no classroom time. So it's all about the examinations. You take examinations, but and, you know, there are standards for this kind of thing. I have a friend of mine who went to SMU to get his law degree. And he went to take the test, state test to be a lawyer. You don't have to have a law degree to do that. You can actually, if you can take the test and pass it, then you're qualified, according to the state of Texas. So when we do have standards like this, I guess, competency-based education, I think it has some advantages. And we do have a similar thing to it in relation to like CLEP testing, for example. It's very similar. I had a friend who worked for Texas Instruments for a couple of decades as a software programmer, but he didn't have his bachelor's degree. And he had the first 2 years. He decided to go back to college, finish out some bachelor's degree, because they offered him certain financial incentives to complete, and they were going to pay the way. And but he was telling me, he says, I'm taking these computer science classes. He's been writing code for a couple of decades. And he has a professor who perhaps hasn't written any code in a decade. And so it was, you know, very easy for him to make 100s in the class, but I don't know how much real education took place in that kind of environment. So perhaps competency-based, in some circumstances, would be extremely beneficial for the student, so as not to have to repeat studies that they really already have knowledge about.
What are the graduation rates like Western Governors?
That's a good question. I don't.
Because my students, they would not survive. They would need, developmental students, they need somebody, a mom, always telling them, you gotta do this next. So I'm curious what would be, because I've had a lot of students tell me, oh, miss, I'm just gonna go to an online, I'm gonna transfer into an online program, and I tell them, no, I just don't think that's very wise. Just get your 2 years and then decide. But I'm curious, what would the graduation rates be?
It's pretty high because this is their philosophy. First, they don't take your typical student. They take students like the way you just described, who have some kind of work, life experiences already, a lot of prior military. And they have them take a lot of these tests to see if they can get credit for some of it. They also are more interested in graduation rates. And we had the chancellor of Western Governors here at the Austin Center, and he came to do a presentation, and he told us that, he said, what do you think is more important? Giving everyone access, or the number of students you enroll, or the number of students you graduate? What's more important? And so their philosophy is the number of students they graduate, because he said, we can enroll everybody, but if they're not graduating, what's the point? Isn't school that you end at some point? So of course, when you look at our graduation rates in the Alamo colleges, our philosophy is different. So that's why their rates are higher, is they do have some really interesting ways of who they let in. It's very inexpensive, I think it's $2,500 per semester, and you can take as many courses as you want for that price. So if you're a smarty pants and you want to take 6 courses, same price. If you only want to take 1, same price. Kind of, it's for that very motivated student who wants to finish. But everything's based on competencies, exams, projects, papers, things like that.
But I think you're hitting on a really important aspect, Michelle, which is the very idea that there are some students that this is probably the perfect venue for them to approach things. But their percentages, I don't know. I don't think it's extremely high.
A lot of people need that hand-holding, and they need the structure, and they need to move through it very sequenced.
It would seem to me that a typical community college like this one would be missing out on the opportunity to have those upper echelon students because they're going to these types of places to do their competency, when really they could compete at the AB level here. They know time management, they're seasoned people, they're older, they've been in the workforce, they can certainly succeed at college. It might be to their benefit to have a place where they could get that A, B, C situation instead of the A through D that a pass fail is. Do you know what I mean?
Well, isn't developmental ed the same? I mean, couldn't you call that competency-based? Don't you get grades, or do you get yes and no?
We give A, B, or C, but we don't give D or F. It's IP, so you automatically are required to re-enroll.
There's a minute left.
Okay, so there is A, B, or C, but.
For math, at least I could give decent Fs. I don't know if I wasn't supposed to do it.
Well, in the reading department.
Oh, okay.
But I know like Northwest Vista, they have pass or no pass.
I've tried IP, giving people students IP only twice, but the next semester they say, oh, my financial aid, will stop because of the IP, so would you please give me whatever grade I earned at the time? That's what I've run across. A few times I've done that.
Several students, when I give an incomplete, it's because the student has to go to Iraq or Afghanistan, and they're gone, and they say, yes, I'll finish. And many times they just don't get a chance. And so 2 semesters later, when the deadline is approaching, they will email and say, just give me the grade.
Oh, wait, you're talking about incomplete, you're talking about in progress.
In progress, yeah. That's kind of what I,
Totally different.
but I treat an incomplete like an in progress because you only give it to a student who is at the end of the term, who's done very well. You don't just give it out to anyone, right?
But the in progress for our division anyway, is students who did earn the D or F. We can't give them the D or F, we have to give them in progress. Then they can choose to take the class again, but they're not moving on unless they take that class again.
So it's essentially like failing.
Yeah.
It's 2 different approaches, I think, ultimately. In one sense, I could see in progress means I'm not there yet, I'm maybe getting closer kind of thing, versus D or F, which I think has a real heavy weighted contextual culture, like law, And of course, the D now really does equate to an F. You just, in the objective program, for example, if they've received anything less than a C, they've got to retake. So it's taking on a different kind of meaning from that culture.
And this is also because it's developmental, that we can give that, because the developmental classes don't count as regular classes as far as the.
Yeah.